Everything you see in our town, greenhouses, livestock, all shared. Collective ownership.
So, communism.
There is a lot of media out there that is often afraid of staking a real political position, instead favoring a broadly liberal but usually apolitical stance. So when I do find media that is unapologetic about what it's trying to say, that makes me happy because it's easy to go through life not standing for anything at all, but that's a timid and ineffectual approach. If you believe in progressive causes, then you should be loud about what you want to say and how you want to say it. Leftist politics should be more than just a thing you think about or hint at. So when HBO's The Last of Us had this little communist moment, I felt excited.
Nah, it ain't like that.
It is that, literally. This is the commune. We're communists.
I'm not saying Craig Mazin is a communist. He probably isn't, but it's just emotionally cathartic that a huge TV show can say the word communism without it being a dirty word. To recap, in the setting of The Last of Us, a deadly cordyceps virus swept the world in 2003. Civilization collapsed. Our protagonists, Joel and Ellie, are crossing the ruins of America to find a group called the Fireflies. In Season 1, Episode 6, Joel is trying to find his brother, and that leads him to a small settlement called Jackson, based on the real-world Jackson, Wyoming. Jackson is the first normal settlement Joel and Ellie have come across, and Ellie remarks as such.
Got that working a couple years ago. After that, sewage, plumbing, water heaters, lights.
This place actually fucking works.
And I think The Last of Us raises a really interesting question in the form of this town. What does a human society that is post-capitalism look like? Every society has to decide for itself how to allocate labor and meet the material needs of its citizens, things like food and shelter and healthcare. A society has to adapt to the material conditions around them. The societies that won't or can't adapt fail. Karl Marx identified 4 different modes of production that civilizations have adopted: hunter-gatherer societies, slave-owning societies, feudal societies, and capitalist societies. At the time of The Last of Us, the old world order of global capitalism had fallen, and humans exist in small communities that are vulnerable to attack from monsters and raider gangs. Fedra adapted by becoming a heavily militarized and autocratic society, whereas Jackson became a much more egalitarian community. There are old people here and children, and everyone works together to keep their town going. They collectively own the town's resources and democratically elect leaders that they rotate out on a regular basis. This is similar to many hunter-gatherer societies, which Marx identified as being more egalitarian because everyone had the same interests. For a hunter-gatherer society to function, everyone had to work together. Someone going hungry or getting sick also negatively affects you because you need those people to help you gather resources and survive, because individually you produce relatively little. It's only by working together that you increase your chances of survival. Marx theorized that a society's culture begins to take shape based on their material conditions and mode of production. So, a hunter-gatherer society, where everyone is important to the success of the tribe, might develop a religion that emphasizes everyone's connectedness, or organize their society along lines that emphasize equality and collective decision-making. So then, you can see how Jackson's community began to develop. In the harsh world of The Last of Us, someone trying to survive on their own wouldn't last very long. Even the furiously independent and resourceful Bill needed his partner for emotional support and companionship. As small societies got better at producing goods and resources, you begin seeing the rise of specialist classes. So think blacksmiths or craftspeople, and eventually the creation of an ownership class. As these different classes emerge, the people within them have different class interests as their relationship to labor and capital changes. So, a feudal serf, for example, would want to keep as much of their crop yield as possible. But a feudal lord who owns the land and tools that the serf uses wants to keep most of what is grown. They have conflicting and antagonistic class interests. In order to maintain power over the workers, an ownership class creates a military or police force to create a monopoly on capital, thus setting the stage for much of history, where a proletariat working class and bourgeoisie try to advance their separate and conflicting class interests. Which brings us back to Jackson. Here, the leadership is elected and rotated out, and everyone owns everything communally, thus preventing potential class conflict. It's how they adapted to their material conditions. But to what end? The ruthless Fedra society functions. It has schools and law and order, but I wouldn't want to live in that society, one that guns down people at the drop of a hat. The point of leftist politics, I always thought, was to create a society that looks after its people. Compare Jackson again to the Society of Survivors from episode 9. This society is ruled by a creepy, violent sadist, and you can see how much of a miserable community community it is. This society is one that's ruled through fear and intimidation, that uses religion as a tool of control and oppression. It's a society that is not built on mutual aid and care. It exists essentially for the pleasure of its sick and twisted leader, and everyone else's interests be damned. I want to live in a society that values equity and fairness. I want to live in a society where the needs of everyone are considered and taken care of. I want to live in a society that isn't just a giant money-sucking vacuum for the rich and cement boots for the poor. I want to live in a society where people trust each other. Episode 6 of The Last of Us is heavy on themes of trust. Joel says this to his brother Tommy.
Tommy, you're the only one I trust. If anyone else sees those bodies.
And Maria says this to Ellie.
The only people who can betray us are the ones we trust.
There is a lot of distrust here, and for good reason. But for humans to flourish, they need to be able to trust one another. Everyone needs to sleep. Everyone gets hurt or sick or old. We need to trust each other to help one another. And for all of human history, we have. Throughout the episode, Joel gets hit with these awful panic attacks. He's worried about Ellie. He's getting older and weaker, and he knows he can't protect her forever. He knows that he can't look after her the same way a community can. He tells Tommy that he wants to leave Ellie with them. Joel is also afraid of being hurt again. He's worried he'll lose Ellie like he lost his own daughter. After Joel lost his daughter, he became a cold and ruthless man, trusting few people and never letting others grow too close. But humans cannot survive that way. We are social creatures. We need one another. And eventually, Joel realizes that he needs Ellie. The basis of the earliest human societies was that we wanted to care for one another. It was only through trust and working together could people survive. I believe that the point of political leftism is so we can create societies based on the ideals of compassion and equality. I think that the current capitalist system we have now goes against our nature as a social species. You can build a society based on fear or coercion, but ultimately, humans thrive best in an environment of mutual trust and aid. Stories where lone wolves heroically overcome the odds by themselves are amusing, but they're not real. The story of humanity, the kind of story we should celebrate and make, are ones where we come together to help one another. We need stories where the ideals of communism are seen for what they are. Good. Oh, I'm recording. Okay.